Yo, how's it going? Like I say, I'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll get going. I'm looking forward to this live session because you may have seen that I've just put out some previews of one of my new EPs, which is going to come out in a few weeks, hopefully sooner. The lead time on the release is longer than usual, but they normally bring it forward, but I'll keep people posted. But yeah, I've spent quite a lot of time on some of the tracks, and I've used some new plugins, and I've not changed my sort of way I do things, but I've got some new techniques to show people, basically. How you doing, Lopez? And I'm drinking a few beers as well. I thought, fuck it, might as well. I just fancied a few 1664s. It's not sponsored by Cronenberg. Long days these days in the studio, so it's nice to unwind with a little cerveza. So what I was just saying is I'm going to go through this project, and I don't know if anyone's heard the EP, if they want me to go through any of the other tracks in the EP, but this one's got all sorts of cool plugins and techniques and things which I can break down individually. And the idea of these sessions is to just ask questions. So in the chat, if you've got any questions about anything, you want me to open up any of the tracks or explain anything, just put it in the chat and I'll explain it. Just give it a few more minutes. How's everyone's music coming along? Where is everyone based as well? Can you just let me know what cities you're from? These three plugins are absolute crucial plugins for mastering. I could not live without these plugins. And this one now, actually. I've been playing with the standard clip, which is a clipper. I can explain a little bit about what this is and why I use it in my masters. And obviously my EQ's probably the most used plugin in all of my projects is the EQ from FabFilter. I've got the Pro 4 now, which is pretty good. Just using it the same as the Pro 3. In that I just do like small sort of first aid bits on the EQ, and I'll do some dynamic EQing as well, which is compressing the band that you've selected. If anyone isn't sure about how that works, just put any questions in the chat. Alright, cool. What time is it? 6 minutes past. Hey, thanks for signing in the States as well. It's a bit earlier, isn't it? It's like midday or something. Las Vegas, I'm not sure what time that is. It's in the morning, isn't it? Is it like 11, 12 o'clock? 11 o'clock in the morning? Florida's probably like 3, 4? I don't know, that's a bit of a guess. But anyway, let's do this. So 11 a.m. yeah. I've never been to Las Vegas. I've always wanted to go though. I just realised as I was showing people the plugins then that my fucking face is covering the screen. I need to remember that that's where I keep my camera. Sweet. Yeah, so if you've never been in any of these streams before, there's a little bit of a delay between when I've said something and for you to hear it, and vice versa. It's, it can be as much as 20 seconds or so. So There's a bit of a delay in answering your questions, but let's just get going. Sweet. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play through this track. I don't know if you've heard it, but I'm going to play like the chunk of it in the middle, and then I'll just start breaking down some of the plugins I've used. And as I say, if you've got any questions about anything, just stick it in the chat and I'll explain it. But let me just mute my mic. In fact, I'm going to put my headphones on. Okay, right. Okay, sweet. So that's the track. A little bit more of a, I don't even know what kind of style you describe it, sort of rolling housey with a disco-y sort of vibe about it. Yeah, I really like it. It's cool. I mean, to be honest, it's not perfect for me. Thinking about certain things about it, I could just spend. Honestly, I've spent far too long on the tracks of this EP to the point where I've actually, one thing that I suppose is handy for me to teach is that you can do too much. You can just keep on messing with it and then you end up ruining it. And it's very important to kind of try and draw a line under it and just get it out and release it to the world. And then it's sort of secured then. And it's, you can't touch it. And it is what it is. So this, I mean, I can replace the file on the release. So, you know, there's a few things. Like I just lowered the BPM just to slow it down a touch because it was a bit fast. But I'm just going to have one last fresh listen on Monday and then I'm going to decide whether or not it's complete or not. but I'm pretty happy with it. But yeah, so from a high level, I can just sort of break down all the different layers. So we've got like the typical setup for the low end group, which I always have, which is all the low stuff. Now I don't know if you can hear, but there's like a bit of a mid-low, mid-knock, like that's kind of punching coming through, and I don't like that. It's basically there. So yeah, I've got the low end. It's made up of a kind of like a 909 thumpy kind of kick. I got a layer on the kick, which is quite important it's quite important to choose the layers that you put on your kicks. You know, you don't have to have a like a layer on top, but I mentioned this before. Whenever you sort of playing with low end and you're messing around with the overall, you've got to, like, when I listen to music, I kind of see it in like 3D. So in my studio, all the low end stuff is at the back, behind the screen, and all the high frequencies are like up here in your face. So the reason why I always add the kick layer is because it helps you connect the lows and the highs into one space, and it helps the groove. It tightens everything together. So I've spent quite a lot of time deliberating over the kind of layer that I want and how loud, because if it's very loud, then you get that kind of like slappy fall to the floor hit. If you have it quieter and then more of a kick comes through, you get more of a rolly kind of vibe. So you kind of get the kick and then the claps come in separately, like kick, clap, whereas if it's loud, you just kind of get this like ch, 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 which a lot of like disco music has. So I was trying to find the balance between the volumes of this kick layer. Basically, I spent a lot of time just on the volume of that alone. The sound I use typically on a kick layer is the same hi-hat as that I'm using in my tops. So the hi-hats in this are kind of like your kind of slightly organic-y sounds. They're not too electronic. So the kick layer hi-hat works in the same style. If I'm using a particular, I get a bit sloppy from time to time, but I am using the same hi-hat. I should usually use the same hi-hat that I'm using for like the open hi-hat or the one that's in like the main groove. It would be weird if you use like an 808 hi-hat and then you've got like a really dusty sort of real hi-hat in the tops. It just feels totally disconnected, and you kind of want to keep the sounds within the same family. It's quite important you do that. So yeah, so I've kind of just got basic low end. I've got what have I got here? This is the bass line. I've just realised something. Because of the click, I always usually put there's a click. The click is coming from the Ableton compressor sidechain, by the way, which is a little bit annoying, to be honest, but yeah, I just mitigate that. So turning it down there wouldn't make a difference, the filter there, because it's coming from the compressor after the chain, sort of like later on in the chain. So I'm glad I noticed that. I mean, you don't really notice it in the mix anyway, to be honest, but just done a little bit of corrective EQ. Guys, you just tell me what you want to see, because I don't want it to be that I just kind of go over the same shit, you know, like the basic stuff, like everybody's seen the low end. I suppose there's not anything particularly special about that. Just does what it says. I'm just going to get rid of some of the sounds that I'm not using. The drum tops is full of all sorts of stuff. I'm actually using like a really filtered and like cut up short loop from a pack for like the clap. Very wide, isn't it? Now, panning and stuff is also very important to consider because that affects the groove as well. You know, like sometimes, for the most part, I keep my tracks relatively central. Like I don't do like really wide panning stuff. It's not something that I feel is that necessary for this kind of music, because anything down the middle is kind of like where the tightness is. Any kind of synths, I'll pull out slightly. Vocals, I'll pull out slightly. The hi-hats and claps pull out slightly. But everything else is quite central, and especially all the lows, you want to keep that kind of in a nice space. That said, it is nice to widen the sub, the basses sometimes. It just adds. It's all on a case by case basis. So sometimes tracks work better with the basses dead mono, and then sometimes it works nicely if you just pan them a little bit. Depends on how much space is like needs to be filled out in the stereo field. You might find like just like a slightly wider bass just opens up the track a little bit more and allows you to you don't have to do as many layers in the drums, for example, because you're filling it out a little bit more with the bass. But it's all on like a case by case basis. So if you want me to break down any of the layers in the drums, I can do. A plugin that I've been playing with lately is called Saturator, which is it's like a saturator plugin from Kilohertz. So this is actually one of my favourite plugins to add character and distortions to the tracks, because it does a good job of sort of softening and adding a little fuzz to your sounds without, like, it's got a really nice distortion. It's not too, like, it doesn't bring in too many of those like mids that don't sound very nice. It just adds like a fuzz around it, and it kind of softens your lows and things as well. It's a nice plugin. So this is a really cool plugin. I would definitely recommend this. So this is what it sounds like on and off. So you can see I got the mix around about like 8-10%. Just to... It's actually already got like a little bit of noise on it. Anyway, but yeah, it's a cool plugin that I even use it on my drums for a bit, and then I think I did have it on. Now, one thing I will say about using, like saturators and faturators or whatever on your lows is that I don't do it so that it's that noticeable when everything's playing. All it does is just add a little bit of that extra like high-pitched texture to the lows, which helps gel all that lows and highs together. That's why I tend to use any plugin like that, which is why I've used Erosion on all the lows as well. It's just adding that sort of little signy, reduxy ringing sound which just pulls everything together. Eric's just asked, does this track have mono or wide and bass? This is mono. I'll just add a little bit of widening just to see what you think. It could work on this, to be fair, but there is a lot of wide stuff happening in the drums, so I don't want to like overkill. Now I don't know if you can tell, but that doesn't work. I don't think wide. I think it affects the groove and the sort of tightness of the mix too much. The kick and the bass and all that sort of stuff needs to be the foundation of this groove, because the drum tops are quite sort of shaky and rolling and if you had like there's too much energy and things going on in the drum tops for the wide bass to work. It needs to be simplified and kept in the middle. That's what I think. Get rid of that. So in terms of widening plugins, that's one of my favorite ones. I don't know if you've heard me talk about it, but the PSP widener. So what it does is it widens, but it kind of pulls things out of the mix. So it's almost like a 3D plugin. So like it kind of, the speakers are there, and it brings it out and wide. So it kind of almost sits it on top of everything else, which I think is really nice to use for anything that's clashing with other elements. Oh, Nathan's just asked, I'm fairly new to producing, but I was wondering how you're able to use all of these plugins without the CPU going crazy. This is a pretty powerful laptop, to be honest. It's one of the new M3 Maxes, so that helps. If you are struggling though, like, you can just bounce things down to audio. So like if you're happy with the overall tone and character, you can right click and you can just freeze and flatten, and then that will just lock everything down to audio, and then that'll remove any CPU problems. So you could do that on like a track by track. So if you do find like your CPU is overloading because you've got too many plugins, then just do that as you're working on a track. Sometimes the issue can be is that you can't really undo it. So if you're happy with the plugins that you're using and the processing, then just right click and freeze and flatten, and then that'll just free up any CPU demand, and it'll help things move a little bit more smoothly. I do find as well as like a little extra thing is that I feel like audio unit plugins are less demanding on the Macs. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that audio unit plugins don't cause any CPU demand while nothing's playing. If all the plugins I was using in this project were VSTs, the CPU would be quite high now, and that's just idle. I don't know if they've changed it, but I know a few years ago this was the case. So I always found that audio unit plugins tend to be a little bit easier on the CPU. But yeah, obviously a good like computer is important. One thing that I do have though, which is quite frustrating, another little tip actually to help any of that, is like your buffer size. Like mine's actually quite low, but like I say, the computer's quite powerful. You can raise the buffer size up to like 512, 1024, and it'll ease your CPU quite a lot, but then you will get some lag in like playing in MIDI. I actually get quite a lot of lag on this, which is really frustrating. It's like that when I tap. So I've actually messaged Ableton to ask which of the plugins in this project are causing like the most amount of lag, because what you find is there's a certain kind of plugin which causes a lot of the problems, and it's things like sidechains and processors that involve being bang on the time. What it does is it lags everything else in order to make sure that like a sidechain plugin, for example, like LFO tool, that is have I got LFO tool on this? Anyway, yeah, LFO tool is just a sidechain plugin which I use from time to time, this one. And because it's ducking the sound, you know, it can't predict the future, so what it does is it ends up delaying everything else so that it sits in front of the processing. And then the more of those you pile on, the laggier your sort of performance is. Hope that answers your question. These bees have gone through and I might have to go to the toilet in a second. Yeah, so in terms of like the hooks of this track, so I do a lot more sampling than I used to. 5, 10, no, even 15 years ago, I was almost completely using VSTs and just like drum samples and keying in the MIDI, but now I found myself using a ton more like drum samples, like because I've become really particular about the sort of genre and the character of the sounds I'm using, and to get a really good authentic house kind of tone and groove and drums, you need to use like old samples and old loops taken from machines. That's just black and white, the truth. It's very, very, very difficult to create a really old style housey beat using MIDI and keying everything in. It takes a lot of processing and sort of matching the sounds, and you know, a lot of these things have come through machines and the process in such a way that gives it so much nice character. So I do find myself using more and more old style samples and just ripping snippets from Spotify and things and then sampling them down. So but what I will say is, though, sampling comes with a ton more problems than if you just use plugins, because plugins are clean, they're predictable, they're easy to mix because they're normally pretty, you know, you piece them in and they fit in the pockets nicely. The second you start using samples, it becomes very, very difficult to mix, and you need to be very good at balancing the volumes, the EQ. You don't want any clashing stuff. You want to make sure the grooves are working. So I found myself moving more into a lot of sampling. I prefer the sounds of things that have been sampled, and then I can manipulate them. Yeah, I still use my VSTs now and again, but I'm using a lot of samples now in my tracks. So the track that I actually use for this is like a disco tune. So you're not going to believe this, but the track actually came from this. House music from the first day I heard it. Sing it. Sorry, it's not that one. This one. So that is the only bit I have used, and I've just snipped out that, and it's faster, and I've kind of just like warped the timing so it's a little bit tighter, and yeah, so that's what I've kind of built the track around that, basically. But like I really do like so what I tend to do is it's not. What I will say is I don't often take snippets from, you know, like housey tracks, like old house tracks. I normally take them from stuff that I hear on Spotify. Like I listen to quite a lot of like R&B and soul music and stuff on Spotify, and I find that there's some amazing little snippets of guitar licks or just some keys or something, and I like to just stick it in the stem roller, which is this plugin here. I think everybody's seen it. Stem roller. It's free. It's totally free, open source, and you can just stick in a URL of YouTube, and it'll just split the stems from drums, instruments, vocals, and bass. Really handy. So yeah, so that's from that stem roller. I just opened it and then closed it. And then like I've used for this bit here. So this is actually from Omnisphere, the plugin Omnisphere, which is a Spectrasonics plugin. Really good. It's basically like a plugin that has absolutely everything. It's got a million different sounds, basses, even drums. It's got strings, it's got keys, it's got like warpy stuff. It's got synths. It's got absolutely everything. And I took it from the ARPs section. So the ARPs. Like even that's quite cool. That's similar kind of vibe. But yeah. Such a lot of delay on the keys, it's impossible to time it in. But yeah, this is a really cool plugin. It's quite expensive though, but I suppose once you've got, it's like an investment. You know, I would recommend the Spectrasonics plugins. They are massive, you know, like 50 gigabytes big. It's mental because it's all sample based, so they sound really authentic. Same company that does Trillion, which is like a sick bass plugin. But anyway. Is there any particular part of this project you want me to show you? Is there anything that jumps out? Was there anything that you heard? I'll just play it again from the drop. So as you're thinking about that, there's a little technique I want to sort of teach you. Let me just put full cam on. Right, so basically, there's something that's quite important, and it's creating seamless loops. So when you're creating a beat, a very sort of basic and stagnant beat is one that just starts on the first beat and ends on the fourth, or if it's like 2 bars or 4 bars, and you can distinctly hear the loop. So it starts and it ends, and it starts and it ends. And if you really want to create a really nice groover and a track that just seamlessly flows throughout the loop, is you want to be adding things just before and just after the beat starts. It's kind of like gluing that section of the loop. So let's just say you've got like a 1 beat loop. You want to be creating a transition between the first and the second beat. Or sorry, should I say the first and second bar? A beat's too much. So let's just work on bars. So basically, you want to create a transition between each bar. And how I like to do that is by adding in some percussions and some sounds which do gel them 2 parts together. So if you listen to the, if I just solo, let me think how I can best show you. Yeah, so I do it in this track, and the way I've done it is, if I just play the low end. Okay, so that shaker is just one little example, right? And it's just subtle, but it does the trick, right? So, as you can see here, you've got 2... Oh, let me just solo this section. Loop it, I mean. Right, so this is 2 bars. Sorry, it's 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I've done is I've created a seamless transition between bars 3 and 4. Sorry, let me do that again. I've created a seamless transition between bars 2 and 3. Flipping out, I definitely shouldn't have a beer before I do these. Feel a bit pissed. Okay, so it's important to note that you've got one here at the very beginning of the bar, and you've got it here as well, and then you've got one at the very end, and it just creates that transition between the 2 bars and stops it being so rigid. Bar ends, bar starts, bar ends, bar starts. Okay, so then I've gone a little bit further. Oh, what an idiot. I do this every fucking time. So sorry. Right. Okay, I'm going to do that again. Right. So what I was explaining is, so to create a seamless loop, to create like a seamless transition between the bars, what you do is you work with the sounds at the very end of the bar and at the very start of the next bar. So in this particular instance, I've created a little shaker which gels bar 2 and bar 3 together. So yeah, it's a dead simple thing, which does work to sort of, like I say, blend those two bars together. Now I've gone a little bit further. So with this particular sample that I've used, so you can hear here that after the second bar into the third, there's a definitive stop in this loop, isn't there? So that's a loop, that's a loop, that's a loop, that's a loop, and it's quite linear and it's a little bit flat. And you can hear that's where the shakers are coming in, just to kind of blend those two bars together. So what I did was I got another sample which is in the same key, and I've added it in that blank bit, that sort of in between the two loops. I'll play them together. I'll play you what that sounds like. I'll play them both together. And I'll put the shaker in there as well. So yeah, so you get the idea. It's a really good way to sort of turn a very boring, stagnant loop into something that flows and has it just grooves, and the beats and the elements they're using all kind of connect. So I do this in all my tracks, really in different ways, but this is the way I've done it in this one, and I'm just wondering if there's any other drum elements that kind of do the same thing. You know, I like to make sure that the percussions are doing a similar job. So like there's a conga in this, and I think that's probably going to act. Yeah. So the way I've worked on this conga is just another technique I want to show you as well, just to create a little bit more. What's the word? Like just give a little bit more unpredictability to the loop and stop it seeming so flat. Is playing with the warp marker, the start time, because this is the conga. Again, just a really boring basic start, stop, start, stop. But I brought the start of the loop to a different section in the 16th note, and now what that's doing is it's completely transformed that stagnant loop into something that is going to blend the rest of the drums. So if I play it before. It's quite a boring, predictable loop. Change it to this. Is that how I had it before? Oh no, it was there. So now, like, there's not really any kind of one defining loop within the track. It all just flows and blends all the way through really nicely. So that's a really useful technique. I would absolutely use that in all your tracks. sometimes even just to kind of turn like a really boring bass line into something a little bit more interesting is doing the same thing. So what you can do is with MIDI, you can just loop it. You go in, add loop here on the side, and then you can just play with the start. Now this isn't probably going to work because I've already done this and I bounced it down, which is how I kind of got to this sequence, and it works with the sample. But just to show you an example. It's basically the same thing, isn't it? Yeah, like I say, it doesn't work. But if you're playing with like a bass loop or a pretty boring bass sequence, loop it and then play with the start time. You'd be surprised some of the grooves that you end up generating through playing with that is so cool. And I've been using it on all my tracks. I've got a list of some of the topics I wanted to talk about. Okay, so there's one topic which someone put in the Discord, making your tracks club ready for the low end. So, you know, something that's quite... Just make that a little bit bigger. So, making your track like low end ready, it involves being able to trust your monitors and, yeah, just understand your speakers and how the low end... kind of references, because some speakers like accentuate some more subs, some are quite mid heavy, like some of the NS10s, the Yamaha ones are quite flat, and there's quite a lot of like character in the mids, and you got to understand that. With mine, there's like a really loud sort of low mid which I need to bring down, but that said, I did a video on low end where I covered all the problem frequencies, but I'll go over them again because I've definitely done it in this track. So for my low group, I always group the kicks and the bass as anything that's like sub 400 hertz, and then I've actually gone a little bit fucking mental on all the EQ on this track. But the reason why I've got multiple EQs is because, let's just say like this particular EQ here, or this one. So if I've done some EQing and I'm kind of working within the similar kind of region here, I don't like to go in and work around that. I'll just open up another EQ and then I'll sort of do it on a fresh one. Same here. But the problem frequencies, it might be best if you just watch that video, go in more detail, but I'll just tell you. So what I do on the low end group is I always stick a multiband on and I just go as low as possible on the FabFilter multiband, and then I just pull the threshold down a little bit, and that's just taming that wompy sound, which is just completely unnecessary, and it'll just sound awful in a club. And then some EQ bits that is quite important. 70 hertz is like a really wompy sort of sound, doesn't offer that much. Can you hear that? It's a bit of a mess. And then between 108 and 120, it's like a kind of it's like a low mid area that's just adds like a kind of woodiness to the sound. I don't like it. I like to pull that down a little bit, and that sort of warms up the low end. What have I done on the bass? Probably the same kind of EQing. I've taken a bit of that out. That's because the bass sample I was using has got like quite a lot of ringiness in that, and I just needed to tone that down. In terms of being able to reference your mix at the end to make sure it is club ready, Span plugin is a lifesaver, because I've talked about like the oh fuck, is ringing me here. Sorry about that. That guy knows I'm doing a live stream as well. I would not be surprised if he's just done that on purpose. So Right. So yeah, so span plugin. This is just a spectral analyzer, and it gives you. I stick it on the master at the very end of the chain, and I have like a good idea. I want the lows to be Don't worry about the volume, but the lows come, and then it comes down, and then the highs, and the highs are just around about the same height as the lows, maybe just a touch lower. And I know that there's a good balance there in the lows to the highs, and I know that in a club it's not going to be too bassy or it's not going to be too high. There are a few little bits there that are quite sticking out. I'm not too concerned about them, to be honest. It's fine. Actually, I will just. I like to lean more to the side of softening the highs than them being too bright. I prefer like a warmer sound overall than something that's too bright, because I've played enough gigs to know that a track that's too bright sounds a lot worse than one that's too dull. Because if you imagine being in a club, speakers are loud as fuck. You know, sometimes depending on the acoustics, you're going to get a lot of echoing. The second your highs become too prominent and too bright, it's just going to really, it's just going to sound really nasty. So, like I say, I err to the side of having stuff a bit warmer than brighter. So, you know, maybe bear that in mind if that's something. And also, if you're making like housey stuff, you don't want it to be too bright. If you're making that like really tech housey kind of vibe, then maybe you go a bit brighter, but I'm not making that. So, what was the other one? So someone asked in the chat like how to understand the correct levels. Now there's no, you see videos all the time on YouTube and they really annoy me how people say, oh, you know, you do your gain staging like this, or you have, you know, to gain stage properly that you need your volumes at this decibel and you kick at this and then you snare at this, and it's just not like that at all. Because once you get like, how many tracks are in this project? I got 65 tracks in this project. If you stick to a certain rule of thumb, you know, your kick is at -1, your snare is at -3 or whatever, this track is going to sound horrendous. Because how the hell are all these different elements? They're all just going to be fighting for place. So, again, it goes back to understanding your monitors, understanding your room and how the sound translates to other speakers and in the club. Using the span plugin I just mentioned, this is key to knowing that you've got a nice balance in your lows and your highs without anything being too quiet or too loud. A couple of things, a couple of considerations. Your kick needs to come through really consistently. So make sure that anything that's subby is side-chained. There's nothing clashing with the kick, because the last thing you want is the kick to be playing and then the bass comes in and the bass just takes over the kick and the kick just becomes soft, you know, in the middle of the bar, and then it comes back in. It just sounds terrible. So as long as your kick's coming through hard and consistent, you've got a nice clap which is not too loud but just works. It's a really difficult answer to give you, because it's not as there's no black and white. There's no like this is how you do it. So it really is a case of getting to know your speakers, using your referencing. So, you know, if there's any particular tracks that you really love the sound of, just reference it. There's not cheating. Just listen to the tracks, put them side by side. Is your clap too quiet? You know, is your kick too loud? Whatever against the reference, and then just work with that, because your ears do play tricks on you. If you're in the studio and you're making music all day long, you are not making a good mix. You need to go take a break and come back with fresh ears. Listen to some references. Like I say, use the span plugin. That's the only way to do it. But don't ever listen to any of this gain staging nonsense on YouTube about having things set at a certain level. It doesn't work. And the problem with like when you're producing and you're kind of mixing as you go along as well is things change all the time. Like the second you start applying EQs, you know, like look how much EQing I've done on this particular track. That's not an EQ. You know, so I'm doing a lot of subtractive EQ in there, a little bit of boosting on the lows. I've got a compressor. You know, these are all adding and subtracting the decibels. You can't always rely on setting things up the same way every time. But that's kind of like why I do what I do here as well, which is why the feedback and the coaching is helpful, because it's just another set of ears. So you can be like, yeah, sounds good. I can now send it off to labels and it's going to be right. You know, like there's times when I've got some friends I'll send some of my mixes to now and again, and I'll be like, does anything sound off? But ultimately, you got to know your speakers. And I use SonarWorks as well, so I've kind of treated the room. So I know that what is going to come out of these speakers should translate pretty well. So I reckon another technique we could talk about is call and response. I don't know if anyone here is the one who's requested the call and response, but call and response can be done in a bunch of different ways. I use call and response techniques in everything because it's a very easy way to fill the gaps and create a groove on top of your beat. Like these are ways I've filled the gaps here with these two techniques. Like if I play all the melodic stuff together. I was just wondering where that white noise was coming from then. So yeah, call and response is about finding sounds that are in the same key and playing them at different parts of the sequence. So there's different ways you can do it. One way I like to do it is to find the key of the track I'm working on and then going in and finding samples or sampling some stuff, get it into the right key, and then I just play them in their own little parts. What I could do is I could just create a new track. I'll save this actually. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to strip out everything here. Okay, one way to create really like instant little snippets and little cuts for call and response is to choose a bit of music that you're sampling. I like to take it from Stemroller, stuff I found on Spotify, and then I load it in, and then I start applying effects. So let's just see what. Let's just play with this. This is going to be a little bit. Okay, so this might be difficult, but let's just go for it. Actually, that's a terrible one. Everything's like muted. Did I just drag a bit? No, I didn't even drag a bass sound in. Let's try a different one. Telephone, what's that? Sounds like it could work. So what I like to do now is I like to go in and actually just start recording loads of different kinds of effects. I need to actually bounce this down to audio, 2 seconds. Okay, so we've actually just got a lot of cool sounds that we know are going to work as a call and response, so we can now start cutting some of these out. The good thing about slicing sounds is you can go in and just adjust it. So the idea is to play any of the sequences within the gap. So you don't want to be, duplicating over in the same sequence. It's all about filling the gaps. I'm actually going to remove that one. Do you know what I've been doing as well, which is a little bit sort of sneaky little cheating way of just writing bass lines. If you're you just want to get a little bit experimental, I'll go onto MIDI and I'll add the scale. I need to find the scale of the track, and usually what I do is I use key. If there's a lot of elements, it's usually just some kind of minor version of whatever the root note is. So probably like a D then. So if I go to bass line, go to minor pentatonic. Sometimes I'll do minor pentatonic, or I'll do just normal minor. Go to a D. Oh, that sounds terrible, but then wait a minute. Now go into the loop thing that I told you earlier on, and just make sure that that section there is looped. Highlight it actually and just loop it. And then just sometimes play with this. So now you can hear how the bass line no longer just fits that loop grid. It kind of flows in between the loops now. So that bass line is helping eradicate that really basic loop vibe you get. I'll tend to do is I'll just put in like D minor. Like my computer is a little bit like a splice because I've got so many samples. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't planning on adding something like that in, but this is another example of, you know, adding some bits in between the loops. Don't know what it's going to sound like pitched up, but. So you get the idea. Yeah, it got a lot funkier because, like I say, it's not just on that, you know, beat to beat like grid. It all flows. So that, I suppose that's one of the takeaways of this live stream, to be honest. Creating those seamless loops by filling in the transitions between the bars. There's some packs as well that you know that have some really nice sounds. I could definitely recommend the pack by Jeremy Sylvester. There's all sorts of cool stuff in this. So you can kind of play. Some of them are in the same key as well. So chord one. So the keyboard, so it's lagging a lot. I know the bass line's not in key now really, but fucking lag. So as you can see, I just don't want anything playing at the same time. You can just go mental with sampling, honestly, it's nuts. There's a little gap there. Just fill the gaps. I keep teaching people this. I've been telling people for almost 6 years now. Fill the gaps. That's like my signature little tip. I know it's a little bit like raw and a bit weird, but it sounds pretty cool. And then what I quite like to do is I like to go in and then group all the bits together and then add some kind of overarching processing just to tie the sounds in so they don't sound too disconnected. Now it's fine if you want to keep them disconnected and you want them to sound like they're literally totally isolated and they're all over the shop. I don't like to do that. I like to sort of try and tie them in together somehow, and like these plugins like Factor It are quite nice to do it. And then phases as well. A little bit of reverb. So yeah, you can see as well how I've kind of I've allowed the first bar to breathe. The first bar, you know, in this kind of like 4-bar loop, I suppose. And then I've added all the kind of funky transitioning bits in between the second and third. That just allows that first hit. So if you've got like a big build-up coming in, that first bit breathes without having like white noise and effects and all this kind of stuff. It just allows the first beat to come in. So like this is what it kind of sounds like with the, if there was a bit of a beat. I've gotten rid of all the transitions and stuff from a little double kick's quite nice now and again. And I like to do the double kicks at the end of the bar as opposed to the beginning. The beginning can work sometimes, right? So yeah, you get the idea. How many people are even in the group at the moment, in the chat? Alright guys, well, I suppose it's a good time now just to ask if there's anything, you know, you want me to try and cover. Because it's easy for me to just get carried away and I want you to learn some new stuff. So yeah, just let me know what you want to discuss. We're going to do it for another 20 minutes or so. I reckon's good. I'll get the live stream uploaded after as well. So yeah, that's call and response. I've actually done a video in the creative tips where I showed the call and response of one of my EP remixes that I did. I can't remember who it was for now, but I use just the same chord but with a different plugin. So like, you know, let's just say what plugins do I like to use? Cog. Let's just say the M1, I guess. The M1 plugin drives me mental because if you don't double click on the preset before you close it, you lose it. It's not the best sound, to be honest, but just to give you an example of what I'm trying to explain. So we go. I've just chosen the worst sound for that. Let's go for maybe like a piano or something. get the idea. I'm going off on a bit of a slow one on that. But yeah, so call and response. I haven't had any messages from anyone about any questions. I am still live, Anyway, I'll give it 5 minutes or so. If you've got any questions, put them in the chat. If not, I'll upload the video for people to rewatch. And what I'm going to do with this particular video, I'm going to start cutting them into chunks instead of just putting them on, because I cover so many useful topics in these live streams, and I always find that people just miss them. Like if they've not been in the live stream, or even if they have been in, there's a lot of points to get through, and if I split them out and label them properly and put them in the sections, people can sort of locate them a lot easier. Sorry I've not done that before, but I'm going to start doing that for all my videos going forward. So yeah, I'll give it a minute. If there's any questions, then wicked. If not, I'll speak to you all in the Discord. Alright guys, well, looks like no more questions for me. So I will see you in the old Discord. Yeah? Alright guys, well, thank you for tuning in. I'll get this video uploaded in all the chunks. And for those on the call, drop me your tracks and I'll get listening as soon as possible. Alright guys, thanks for signing in. Speak to you all soon. Ciao ciao.